Okie dokie.
All right, so today we're going to go over this article. I think it's from 2025. The risk of assumption, rethinking victim survivability profiling in firefighting. So I believe we did, not this particular article, but we did hit on this on our show a few times. So we'll go through the article and kind of pick it apart. So
well, it makes a lot of sense, and just go back so you can cue in the author there. So
yeah, I was just looking at him. It's this is by Bill Carey. July 25th, 2025. So victim survivability profiling was purported to help assess whether trapped occupants are likely to survive a fire, combining factors like smoke, fire location, time, and construction. Supporters claim it balances civilian and firefighter safety, but when used as a justification for not entering a building, VSP can devolve into trading civilian lives for perceived safety based on assumptions, not evidence. So, firefighter safety matters, but we must examine, does VSP foster overcautious, life-limiting decisions, or does it guide them? When we analyze actual firefighter line-of-duty deaths, the data, especially from us, shows interior operations account for a small fraction of deaths, while civilians frequently survive in conditions VSP would likely dismiss. So, again, we talked about this a little bit on our show about when you go to a fire, it could look like it's fully involved, so to speak, but in reality, it could just be the fire that looks big. You get some water on it, put it out fairly quick. There's potential for rescue in there. So, absolutely. Some of these stats.
So there's a lot to it. So, there's been a lot of studies over the years, UL studies and the NIST studies and all of that stuff that they've done, which has given us a lot of information. And then, this article was printed in Data Not Drama. That's a website, data dash not drama, whatever it is, but something like that. You can look up
data-not-drama.com.
That's it. So when you look at the article, and it makes a lot of sense, and there's other stuff out there. There's another study that was done, the Firefighter Rescue Survey, that was also done. And these things have now gotten us a lot of information. And, we've done a lot of things on information. We've also done a lot of things on just beliefs of what we thought. Okay. And, when we start looking at these fires and what's really going on, I've been to many, many fires where I've gone to where people have sheltered themselves in place in a bedroom somewhere or a back room or bathroom, stuff like that. So Ripon Kitchen fire, many guys in New York City Fire Department have crawled past the fire, got into these rear rooms, bedrooms or whatever, opened the door, and it was clear as day. They closed the door behind them, and these people were fine. So, you could have a lot of fire. It could look really impressive sometimes, especially if it's on the front of the building, like a porch fire or a garage fire, where it's ripping out and it's going up the front of the house and stuff. And the whole back of the house is perfectly fine. So you can't always just look at a fire and say, "Oh, those people are dead."
And that's kind of what
that's what this article is kind of all about, is that, when you really look at the studies of firefighter line of duty deaths, when you really look at how many people have actually died in a fire as a firefighter, the numbers are very small. Yeah.
So let's take a look at this.
Same thing when you look at the Firefighter Rescue Survey and everything else of how we make these rescues and when they're actually done. And you put all this information together, even looking at NFPA's 2 in, 2 out and everything else. It's about a reasonable belief.
Right. So let's look at this right here. This part, but our interior operations killing us? No, not like some believe. NFPA's 2024 fatality report documented 62 on-duty fatalities. Of those, over 40% were due to sudden cardiac events. Under 15% were vehicle-related. Interior fire suppression and search-related activities made up under or less than 10%, with 0 search-related deaths. And it's not even broken down into interior deaths. In 2025, they recorded 47 on-duty deaths, including only one interior search-related fatality, about 6% of the total. And then if we look at these stats down here, this is the firefighter rescue survey that you were just talking about. You have a 63.7% overall survival rate for rescued occupants, rising to 68% if removed within 6 minutes. Then 50% of rescues were performed by search crews, 24 by attack, reflecting that fire attack often includes rescuing victims as part of the operation.
And part of that is because a lot of these departments are engine-based.
Right.
If you really think at most fire departments across the country were more engine-based than truck-based. It's the bigger cities that really run truck and engines like separate entities. So an engine gets there first, the engine's going to go in and either start a search or stretch a line, and they're going to come across a victim. And that's why you see a lot of rescues are made with people bringing a hand line into the building. So an aggressive interior search and aggressive interior attack will help you find people. Right.
So now if we look at this from a standpoint of low manpower, so there's really the biggest thing here is your size up, your regular 360 exterior size up, getting a good look of how much of a fire load there is, entrances, exits, all that stuff. When you're low on manpower, because I guess part of what this article is saying is you can't really make an assumption from the exterior. You have to get inside and try to figure out, okay, is there a point of access? Can I get in and do a thorough search? And obviously there's a bunch of different factors. What is the condition of the building, just in general, not being that it's on fire. But when you're looking at it from a low manpower standpoint, I think that maybe this is what this VSP is looking into. It's risk versus reward, basically.
It is risk versus reward, but if you look at the majority of the country, obviously about 70% is volunteer, but even a lot of these paid departments, smaller paid departments, combination departments, some of them only ride with 2 or 3 people on a rig, and they need multiple jurisdictions to come in and respond. Okay, so like I was up in Arlington the other day teaching a class, and there's a bunch of smaller paid departments all over Poughkeepsie, Fairview, LaGrange, and all of these little departments, right? And still, it's like the Valleys in some sense, because they had a working fire in Poughkeepsie. It was only 4 miles from where I was, and they had Fairview and Arlington and everybody else mutually aided in. It's a very similar type of situation. So when we look at what happens at these fires and rescues that happen, and I just heard about another one that was up in that area, up by Highland, where they rescued a woman out of a window. This is what happens in the majority of fire departments across the country. Not everybody is the FDNY. The FDNY can throw 125 firefighters at a fire with multiple units within 10 minutes. Nobody can do that, okay? Nobody has that type of manpower. So when you really look at what goes on around the country, we're short-staffed and we're doing things. And I think with 2 in, 2 out, NFPA, the SCBA procedures and stuff, that are all these requirements that we have, and these victim survivability profiles, we've scared people to the point that some people say, well, it's not worth it. It's too much of a risk. But we see firefighters sometimes not always taking, getting into the building is quick enough. They take their time. There's one down in Louisiana right now with a lawsuit going on that I believe it was a family of 4 that died in the fire, and they're saying that the first 2 company didn't go aggressively enough to get in there and rescue their family. Right. And we're going to be called on the carpet. There was a fire just on Long Island in the last week or so, or I believe it was Long Island, but 2 police officers and a volunteer firefighter entered the building, and the police officer found a 9-year-old kid, pulled him out, and they lived. Now, they had 0 protection, 0 gear. If we're pulling up on a fire truck, and there's a lot of people that talk about this, Scott Thompson talks about this, chief down in Texas, Cody Trestrial talks about this a lot, right? A breaking apart 2 in 2 out, what it really says, and what our actual job is. Our job is life and property. And we have all this gear, we have all this equipment, and we have all this training, and we're waiting to enter buildings.
Right.
Because it's too much of a risk.
To
and
that
when you
point,
look at this stuff, if you look at this stuff that's in this article and the way this is talking about, there are a lot of avenues for people to be alive in these buildings, and we need to get into these buildings.
So that goes into this part right here, which is rescues that defy VSP assumptions. So rescues frequently occur in conditions VSP might label hopeless. So one
Correct.
is children found behind closed doors adjacent to fire rooms. Elderly individuals were pulled from smoke-filled corridors, and people were retrieved during zero visibility while fire attack lines were advancing. So that right there, to your point, is, you know, if we're going to make these assumptions from the outside, well, just look at some of the fires recently that had the pictures of bedroom doors that are completely charred on the outside because you had hot smoke, fire in the hallways, but when you open that door, that bedroom's fine.
Crystal clear. Yeah, I've seen many of them.
Yeah.
Many of them. And that's why we stress the importance of you should go to sleep and close your bedroom door, right? We stress it all the time. We even stress in apartment buildings and everything else that if you leave your apartment, to close the door behind you, right? Close the windows. Like when we were in school, right? When the fire alarm went off, what did they tell you? Close all the windows in the classroom, leave the classroom orderly, and close the door to the classroom, right? We were taught this from a very young age.
Yeah, well, that's why in buildings, commercial buildings, those doors close in the hallways.
Well, they're supposed to. In multiple dwellings, they're supposed to, but they don't always, right? People, they break, they don't get fixed, or they chock the doors open and stuff, right? And that's fire protection, right? These doors are smoke and fire protection. So if a person closes the door, and some people, right, they'll put a towel under the door or something like that, they have the possibility of surviving a fire by sheltering in place.
Yes.
Okay? So
I think that it doesn't go without saying, though, that everything we're talking about here all makes sense. It's all in the data and whatnot. But there is that other part of it, which is your situational awareness, where if you are entering a building to go and do a search, like that's what we're supposed to do, but you see certain things, like the structural integrity of the building. Is the floor spongy? You know, the smoke conditions. Is it going to flash? You know, are you seeing rollover? Things like that. Yes, you still have to pay attention to that. We're not saying to just go balls to the walls and get in there, but you should absolutely get in there, but use that situational awareness, use your training to understand when things could potentially go bad.
It all comes back to your training, right? We talk about how education and training is so important. The perishable skills, we have to keep them up. And your situational awareness is super important. But once again, we were trained to enter buildings. If you look at a civilian, as soon as they see smoke, as soon as they see fire, they want the hell out of there. Okay? They think we're crazy that we run in those buildings. But we're trained to handle that situation. We should know what a rollover looks like. We should know when flashover is about to occur. We should know about closing the door or containing the fire as best we can. We should know about getting a line in place and putting water on the fire as quickly as possible. That's all part of our training. And we should understand that. But we should also understand that there are areas of buildings that can be perfectly fine. Smoke is deadly, and smoke is really, really bad. Okay, especially with the plastics that are burning these days, it is very toxic smoke. But is there a possibility that somebody could be alive somewhere in that building? Yes. And we have to do our jobs and get into these buildings aggressively and quickly, but safely, to ensure that people live. That's our job.
Absolutely.
So these articles and stuff like this, like I said, the survivability profile, you got to look at other angles. You got to look at what we are actually doing, what this situation involved. But cops are going into these buildings with no protection and rescuing people every single day. We shouldn't be standing outside waiting for 3, 4, 5, 6 more firefighters to come to go rescue somebody. If you have the training and ability to do it, you should be able to do it within all the parameters of the rules of your department.
And there it is. So when you're responding to fires, make sure you're getting in there, rescuing victims. That is your job.
And read these articles. Go to the Data Not Drama website. I didn't see this article until actually this morning. It's the first time I saw this article, but it was written last year, and it makes a hell of a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But look at the survivability of people.
Yep. And that wraps up this video. Make sure you follow us for more. We'll be going through all types of scenarios like this and articles and training topics. So if you haven't already, make sure you hit subscribe down below, and we'll catch you on the next one.